indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Hey, introduction of the board. We have Mark, John, and Jeff on Zoom today, and then starting with the other Jeff.
Jeff Grandy.
Paula Siverly.
Randy Carmody.
Tim Miller sitting in for Aaron Bear.
Tricia Erie.
No agenda revisions this evening. Approval of the board meeting minutes from November 12th. Motion to approve.
Second.
Been moved and seconded. Any discussion? Hearing none, all those in favor say aye. Aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries. Student representative report.
Hello, my name is Jocelyn Burdick. I'm a junior and I'm ASB Vice President. Being a part of the Sandy High School community has been an honor. I have been in leadership for 2 years. Last year, I had the privilege of serving on class council. I'm extremely involved in my academics, which has helped me grow and become first in my class. I'm involved in the National Honor Society, as well as being a top leader on our varsity cheer team. I've had leadership roles in both HOSA and Key Club, which have taught me a great deal about our community and what it means to be a leader. Thank you for the opportunity to share an update from student leadership. We are wrapping up our canned food drive this Friday. We are so excited to host Human Volleyball this Wednesday as one of our events for our canned food drive. All of our schools participate in this canned food drive. Vultures partners with their local Lions Club for their canned food drive. Next Tuesday, leadership, students, and Key Club members will have the opportunity to go to St. Michael's Church and help our local Kiwanis put together food boxes. This is such a fun volunteer opportunity. Last week, we hosted our third annual Night with the Pies.
I copied and pasted it from this, but it's not on here.
Well.
And if I get on, it's gonna come up here. My email is gonna come up here. If I go to.
It's a really fun night. Looking ahead to next week, we have our winter formal on Saturday, January 20th. Thank you again for the opportunity to present today.
Thank you very much. Superintendent's report, but Tim heard it was coming.
I'll work on it.
That's kind of good job you're on, so.
Yes.
Yeah, forgive me, our auditor is supposed to join us remotely and she's having trouble getting a link. Superintendent Bear wanted me to share just a couple of things that have happened since our last board meeting with regard to the state level and funding in particular. So as you're aware, this is the second year of biennium, which means that we have a full legislative session coming up. It's scheduled to start on February 5th of 2025. As it relates to funding, on November 5th, the state released its quarterly forecast, which amazingly added nearly $6 billion available to the 25-27 budget cycle. Yes, that's great. On the other hand, this is largely due because there's a new chief data economist because the governor believed that the previous model, as we have witnessed in the last few years, was seeing an increasing level of the state kicker refunds based on the existing economist's model, and she thought that was too conservative. So the new person basically didn't find some new amazing stream of revenue. They went back and took the previous economist model and basically reworked it so that it was less conservative. So that said, there is a large kicker projected for 2024, so it's not over yet. So the implication of that is that in a true statistical model, you get closer to an even chance of something will come true or will not come true, right? As opposed to more conservative model from this perspective would say, I want to make sure what we plan on does come through, right? So so while this does add resources into the model, we have no means of determining, that spectrum. Is it still a little bit or is it truly might go the other direction and not come to fruition? So it's just a new perspective. I understand the desire to not leave resources on the table that could have been deployed, but that's just a little background on that. So Again, more resource apparently available for the 25-27 biennium. As it relates to school support, which is our chief source of financing for school operations, the governor did release her model, or the governor did release her proposed budget. Within the proposed budget, as it relates to school support, there's two pieces. In the prior biennium, the folks out on the in the real world, on the recipients of the funds, were saying, listen, we believe your current service level model that they determine what's the cost to maintain the same things that you have today at tomorrow's money so that we can budget it. So the current service model that was used last biennium, school business officials, hands down, all agreed that it was off. It was underfunded as to what our real costs are. So when the governor came into office, she pledged to look at that. She did indeed look at that, and actually several months ago, before any of this information came out, made a pledge that the funding, ground level funding for the current service level for this coming biennium will be increased by $500 million. That's just correctly where it should have been. Right? So in addition to that, as she's proposed her current budget for the new biennium, she's added another $600 million to that. So our base funding in the current biennium was 10.2. Rounded, the funding that's in the governor's proposed budget is 11.3 billion for just the school support fund. That's swell. I mean, on paper, that translates to about a 5% a year increase. You can see some of the labor agreements that have been settled, some of the first cost discussions that are out there. That's still pretty tight. And then considering that some districts are still having enrollment declines, there's still much to be worked out still. But the good news is that's a much improved first draft of the budget that we've seen from K-12 in quite some time. So that's a positive thing. Enrollment, as I mentioned, is the largest factor yet to be unraveled in this. Since COVID, the statewide enrollment's down like 30,000 kids. It's substantial. The enrollment decline can be attributed to three pieces for public ed. One is out migration, so folks just moved out of the state. And you saw the lion's share of that occur within the first year and a half of the COVID outbreak. And then charter school and private school migration, and then most notably recently, and it's affecting us significantly, is declining birth rates. The state of Oregon are at a record low. So we're seeing record lows since I've been in this kindergarten classes this year. So that said, how it affects our district is really kind of in relation to what's pacing with the rest of the state. So if our decline matches the decline for the rest of the state, then that's it. The number of pupils is going to be relatively unaffected. But if our decline is faster than the state, then we're going to receive less funds. If our decline is slower than the state, then we'll be in a better position. So the state hasn't released information related to the first quarter ADM collection for this year. We probably won't get that information until could be as late as January. And so that we're really wanting to see that to see how things are looking for the current year. So enrollment is the big one out there. And then just to touch on the side of it, there are those other funds. The state has increasingly put directed grants in addition to state school support. So we've got the SI grant, the high school success grant, the early literacy success grant. Those are the most significant ones. Those are largely driven based on the corporate activity tax. While they're projecting some increase over the biennium, the corporate activity tax, as I last saw it, was supposed to decrease. So those grants are projected to have some modest increase, because they're only getting a piece of the corporate activity tax. But the corporate activity tax itself is supposed to decline modestly in the first year, decline. I want to say somewhere in the neighborhood of $47 million in the second year. So as I look at the state economist's perspective, and then I take into consideration the corporate activity tax, to me, that seems like a leading indicator of what's going on in the business world. So that'll be interesting to see how that one unfolds. So finally, what I wanted to leave you with was some perspective on PERS. You may have heard PERS talked about a lot in the news about increases that are coming in the next biennium. PERS, completely separate from the state, does their own actual evaluations and reviews, and they do their rate setting on a 2-year basis as well. So next year is the first year, but next year 25, 26, next fiscal year, next calendar year, is the first year of their new rate biennium. So as it sits now, the unfunded actuarial liability is projected to increase, and it's projected to increase based on two significant things. One, the earnings portfolio is underperforming compared to where they do their actuarial evaluation. So if they don't make enough money on the earnings from their investment portfolio, then they have to go, employers, we need more money from you as a percentage of payroll that they charge. The second is payroll. Payroll has actually increased across the state. So, well, that should be good. They're paying more money into because it's a percentage of payroll. Well, no, because that's actually new benefits that are created based on that increased payroll, which is out because the benefits also have an actuarial rate, and that one doesn't care about what's real or not. Whatever they set it, that's the cost. This one, the earnings on the other side are based on what really comes in. Well, this is underperforming, and this one they charge the higher rate anyway. So the benefits calculated on the new payroll are higher than the source of revenue. So that said, that's only a piece of the issue that's going on around the state. Separate from that, 20 years ago, many districts entered into this refunding program. They issued general obligation bonds to have a resource to pay down their PERS rate. So what would happen is I issue bonds, I pay 4% interest on those bonds, but I'm going to give that lump money to PERS, and they're going to invest it, and they're going to make 5%. So it's higher. There's a difference. So that difference, that arbitrage, is able to be applied towards their payroll rate to reduce their overall cost. So they're going to pay bond costs, and they're going to pay still going to pay PERS payroll, but the combined of those is that arbitrage a little bit less. So many districts did this. The money was put aside in a side account and amortized into their payroll rates for a 20-year period. So lo and behold, next year, it's the expiration of a lot of those employers' side accounts. And so what happens is that those savings that they may or may have, some didn't get as much savings as others, as when they issued. But the savings that they were experiencing is now going to go away. And many of them didn't make provision. And frankly, some of the people that issued them weren't the same people that are here today, and they didn't know better. But a lot of them didn't make provision about how to reabsorb that full PERS rate that they're now going to have to pay because it's not subsidized anymore. And so in Clackamas County, just for an example, every district except for 2, their payroll rates as a percentage of PERS is going to go up. Their PERS rate as a percentage of payroll, I should say, is going to go up 8%. One district, theirs is going to go up 16% of payroll next year. Oregon Trail School District, who this doesn't affect, we're just paying those underlying increases because of the poor earnings and the poor or the increase in payroll. Ours rates will go up 1.5 to 1.9. Tier 1 and tier 2 in the opposite. Because we didn't have that cost. So that's kind of the gist of what you're hearing about. Oh, PERS is it's legitimate, it's unfortunate, but luckily, based on where we're at, it's not going to be a substantial element for consideration of our budget. So those are the main points that I want to cover. Again, economic forecast, first perspective on the government budget and in the state of the union with regard to PERS. Any questions on that?
Is the newest or the administration coming in, going to have anything to deal with budgeting?
On the federal level?
Federal level.
Yeah, so there's a lot of rhetoric about, so the biggest element with regard to federal level is the Department of Education and the entitlement grants. There has been a federal senator, but there's a fellow at the federal level who's wanting to introduce legislation to get rid of the Department of Education at the federal level. If you look at the detail of that, though he's proposing to get rid of the Department of Education, all the major elements that are managed by the Department of Education, he's proposing to off to other departments that are more sensibly related to those particular subjects. So it's not that it all goes away. It's that other departments that are more so, trying to make an example, you know, so the special education ID grant, there's another department, the feds, that would pick up that department that already does health and human services. The US Treasury would pick up student loans. They're not saying get rid of college student loans. They're saying, well, the Treasury is in charge of money. They do loans. How about just put them directly in charge of the loan? So it's not about blowing up everything about it. And then the Title IX is always the big one. They're saying, hey, we already have a USC, another federal department. That again would oversee that. So it's not that those things blow up and are gone. It's just that they're redistributed. And obviously those departments have the opportunity to align it more with how their departments handle those particular subjects. So, and then the other thing comes back to level. So they continue to fund Title I at its current level, and will they continue to fund IDEA at its current level? Those are our two largest federal grants, and then school lunch program. That's subject to the annual appropriation discussions, along with every other benefit, and you just can't tell at this juncture, you know, is that the crosshairs for the investment or not. There's been no hedging of a perspective about those three things.
Yeah, there's curiosity, because everything, well, that's what we do here. The speaking and bring it more on the state level and from exactly from what that
Yeah,
meant from a
so-
funding standpoint.
So rest assured, from this state, if there's something that was endearing to this Department of Education and this leadership from this state that was no longer supported at the federal level, states on the majority of those fronts have the ability to impose a more restrictive program, more prescriptive program. Regardless, that's the case in almost any circumstances. It's just that they pull funding related to some of those and say it could be an unfunded mandate from the state. So so that it's a lot more rhetoric now than substance. But there is a lot of question about okay, that will get on such very specific.
We used to talk about enrollment. It seems they talk a lot about grants from charter schools and things. We get per student. So we got our,
Yeah, and that's all through the state. So, all right, thank you.
Thank you. I didn't get any yellow cards from citizens. Certified staff said they didn't have an update, and classified staff, I haven't seen one. Consent agenda, I'll entertain a motion to approve the consent agenda. Been moved and seconded, any discussion? Hearing none, all those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries. Action items. Tim, you want to introduce your other financial report?
Yeah, so we have Tara Camp online with us. She's the partner in charge of the engagement for our annual financial audit for Oregon Trail School District. I will let her cover her elements about, you know, why she's doing what she's doing, what the results are, all that. I will give you a highlight of two things that they came across that we didn't do so good on. One is, if you recall, at the very end of last year, the appropriation transfer to try and cover we thought things were going. Well, they've been even more cost than I expected in particularly special ed instruction categories. That I didn't have the information to keep up with the end of the year. So we overspent general fund instruction due to that. The other areas that in that same budget adjustment brought to light that the No Pine Left Behind had spent more than typical and more than we provided. So we actually did a budget transfer to cover that. And indeed it was covered. But in looking at the specific statute, because it's very rare for us to transfer spending authority from the general fund to other funds, we just change it within the fund, right? This time we were actually trying to give spending authority from the general fund to the other fund, the scholarship fund. And by the interpretation from the auditors, and I trust them, that notice, that particular activity should have been published. So those two things are state guidance, but never rules. And then one other thing I would point out, because I always want to make sure that we point this out. Under the SIA grant, they have a requirement. Even though the auditors already do the financial review and they do look at the substantial grants and whatnot, they do have it explicitly called out requirement to look at the SIA grant funds. So they have indeed done that within this. Though the state would love us to say it's all about the SIA grant, it's really just a minor part of the rest of their supporting state minimum guidance and compliance. So that said, SI does require the conclusion of Tara's presentation for the board to take any questions about the audit. So that said, Tara.
Good evening, fellow directors. Can you hear me okay?
Yes.
All right, sounds good. My name is Tara Camp. I'm a partner with Polly Rogers and Company, and we are the financial statement auditors for the school district. So I'm here this evening to present our report on the June 30, 2024 audit. So we always start out going over the purpose of our audit. And the results I'm going to summarize are from our governing body letter, which is a letter we issue along to the audit that describes everything we're required to communicate with you. So the purpose of the audit is on the first page, and it's threefold for the district. We perform the financial statement audit, and that is where we're testing and assessing the financial statements created by management in order to determine if they're fairly stated. Secondly, we perform the Oregon Municipal Audit Law Compliance Audit, and that is where we are looking at different laws and regulations to ensure the district is in compliance. And then lastly, we perform the federal single audit, and that is where we're testing specific grants that change on a yearly basis. And we do a really deep dive into those federal grants to determine if the district is compliant with all of those requirements. So overall, the results are excellent for the district. For the financial statement audit, we issued an unmodified opinion on the financial statements. That means we have given a clean opinion with no reservations, and it's exactly what you're going for. It's the best result. For state minimum standards, we found no exceptions or issues requiring comment except as noted on page 74 of the report, and those are the two items that Tim already covered. For the federal award single audit, we found no issues of noncompliance and no question costs. And then lastly, there was no management letter issued. So overall, very excellent results. We also like to let you know we had no difficulties in performing and completing our audit. It's always a pleasure to work with the Oregon Trail School District. Tim is an excellent business manager, one of the best in the States, in my opinion, incredibly knowledgeable and professional in all of his work. So it's always one of the audits we really enjoy performing. We had no disagreements about accounting or auditing issues. And then lastly, in that letter, we like to note future accounting standards coming out and some auditing items coming out as well. It's good to be informed about those things because, you know, it can change your financial reporting a little, and it also can create more work for the district finance office. So overall, great results, and I'd be happy to take any questions about the audit if anyone has any.
Any questions from the board? Hearing none, I'll entertain a motion to approve the financial audit. Been moved and seconded. Any discussion? Hearing none, all those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries. Thank you, Tara.
Thank you, Tara. Thank you for your staff's easy to work with, not overbearing.
That's good. Thank you, guys. Have a good weekend, everyone.
Thank you.
Discussion. First, we're gonna call it
You have in front of you a draft adjustment for policy JED and a related AR. This is in response, we had a presentation at a previous board meeting. And it came to our attention that some of the elements weren't updated. So Superintendent Bayer has worked with staff to do just that. He's consulted to OSBA and law policy. And so policy JED, you'll see strike throughs and italics are language added based on the OSBA consultation. And I'm just looking at the OER's reference back, and I don't see any adjustments there. So he's not asking for action at this meeting. No urgency on it. And then the AR also accompanying there, just a reminder, ARs do not require board approval. This is just for your information, now administratively how we're interpreting some of the comments in the required policy. The only thing in the AR that was brought to our attention, and very notably, we haven't had off-campus since the opening of high school. That was a very significant discussion at that time, and very informed and knowing decision. We just failed to go back and update the AR. So this AR is updated simply by removing that section, and then you'll see up above it, the italics of number 1. It's just adding that reference to the policy. So that said, for your discussion, but not requesting any action.
Any discussion for the board? Hearing none. Thank you, Jeff. Appreciate it. Announcements. OTA board meeting is January 7th. Our next board meeting is January 14th, which I believe is a Tuesday. Okay, so just a reminder that our next board meeting is on a Tuesday. There's no further business for the board. The meeting's adjourned.
Right.